Awesome. All right. Well, you know what? It is 5 p.m. on the west coast of Canada, so we're going to kick off our meetup for tonight and welcome everyone to the what are we? I can't believe it's the end of March edition of the Vancouver Power BI Modern Excel User Group meetup here. I guess I should probably click in my slide deck so that it actually advances when I try and do things. So tonight we've got Jason Cockington is joining us from Queensland and Australia, and he's going to be showing us how to show or hide a Power BI visual based on a selection. But before we get into that, we're going to go through and do our standard things of our welcome and overview, which we're in right now. Joseph's here to talk about what's new in Power BI over the last month, and then we'll give it over to Jason in about 15-20 minutes or so in order to get things going there. First thing, of course, is a big shout out to the sponsors. SkillWave is the training company that I run with Matt Allington. As it happens, Jason is actually a presenter at SkillWave and runs some of Matt's workshops for him as well. So there's a big SkillWave tie-in for tonight. Excel Guru is the parent company of SkillWave Training and is where I do a lot of my Excel work. And Monkey Tools is my software product that can help you build better data models faster. And you should definitely check that out if you are working in Excel and Power BI. It's a fantastic tool to have at your disposal. So our next two meetups, you'll notice this time around, I am showing that they are going to both be in Excel. And the reason for this is that we've got Gaëtan Mormont, who's going to be joining us in April to talk about working with Lambda functions. This is going to be really, really interesting, fascinating computer science kind of stuff that blows my mind. So I'm looking forward to this. And then we're actually going to be skipping the Power BI track next month. And the reason for that is that there is an MVP summit that same week. So I'm going to be down in Redmond, and I kind of feel awkward, going and harassing my MVP colleagues to present at these kind of meetups at that point. So we're going to come back in May. John Peltier is going to be joining us to be talking about something cool and interesting, probably tied into the charting and possibly Star Wars, because he's going to be going and doing his presentation here on May the 4th. So we'll see. I don't know if he's going to be doing the Star Wars angle or not. Now I've just put a lot of pressure on him, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, so that's what's happening in the next couple of meetups that are coming along the way. I just want to throw out a big couple of plugs here too. My next semester of my Excel Fundamentals Bootcamp is kicking off on April 14th. If you are interested, or you have some people in your organization who are interested in locking down their core Excel skills and sort of bringing those up to do better data analysis, you should definitely check that out. In addition, my self-service BI bootcamp is also kicking off on April 14th for the next semester. This is my most comprehensive training program that I have with Power Query, Power BI, all kinds of things all together here. If you're interested in this, I got to tell you, one of the most fun things about this one for me is the Ask Me Anything sessions, where we sit down and we actually spend a couple of hours together going through real world solutions and helping people with their challenges. It's a heck of a lot of fun, and the sessions in this one are quite vibrant with that. So definitely worth checking out. The meetup, of course, will be recorded, is currently being recorded now, and will be posted up to the SkillWave YouTube channel as always. I try and get that done within about 48 hours of the meetup happening, and at that point, we will post you a link on our meetup channel, so you will get notified that it is live as soon as it is available. Just a couple of quick notes too. If you'd like some bite-sized training on different things, we've got some Monkey Shorts video on the SkillWave YouTube playlist here. These are 3 minutes or less of technical content that goes on. So if you're interested in checking those out, you should definitely do it. It's kind of neat little hits of information there with some pro tips that you can get started on going quickly. The last thing that I'm going to say before I exit stage left here is, if you'd like to come and speak at the Vancouver Power BI and Modern Excel User Group, we would love to have you. Whether you're talking about Excel, whether you're talking about Power BI, something from the Power stack of Microsoft products, we would love to actually welcome you to our stage, and we're always interested in getting new speakers in here as well. So if you're interested, please fill out the little survey here at excelguru.ca/speak@VanPUG. We'll get in touch and we'll get you on our stage. And Joseph, as you know, that is always my last slide. So it is now time to turn it over to you, my friend. Are you ready to take over? That is your cue. Absolutely.
All right.
So I'll stop sharing here. Oh, I knew you were going to start with this one. Absolutely knew.
Oh, yes. Well, I was on the wrong tab. I gave it away.
There you go.
But yeah, I think that this is definitely the free square on the bingo card for this one.
Absolutely. There you go.
Cool. Well, yeah, thanks Ken for the intro, and welcome everybody. My name is Joseph Yeates, and I'll be doing the What's New in Power BI for this month, or for March. We have a little bit more time than usual. I think it's the 27th, and this came out on the 16th. So I think a combination of a little bit later user group and a little bit earlier in the month by a couple days for the feature release has given me more time to play around with some features. So that's great. But just before I jump into what's new in Power BI, just a little bit about me. As I said, my name is Joseph Yeates. I currently work as a Director of Business Intelligence and Data Analysis at Corporate Finance Institute. And so I help develop content around Power BI, R, Python, Tableau, SQL, Excel, Power Query. But really, my heart is in Power BI and Power Query, which is why I am here today. I presented last month. I was the feature speaker, and I've been involved in the meetup group for I don't know how many years, coming up 7 years maybe, which the number just gets bigger every year as it tends to do.
Just say forever, Joseph.
Amazes me. Yeah,
pretty
sure.
Close.
since almost since inception, forever. Yeah, and so I've given a few different feature presentations, usually on integrating Python or R into Power BI, but on some other topics as well. But with that, why don't we jump into what's new in Power BI for this month? So, as always, the best reference to see what is new in Power BI is the feature summary blog post from the Microsoft Power BI blog. It covers all of the new features for the month, and it indicates whether a feature is in preview or if a feature is now generally available, which usually means that it was previously in preview. I would definitely recommend checking this out, because as much as I would love to be able to speak a lot faster than I am and get through everything, it just isn't possible in 15 minutes. So if you're interested in any of the features that I'm going to cover today, or you want to learn a little bit more about them, or just see everything that's new, I would definitely check out this blog post as well. And one thing that I want to highlight, which not everyone always makes it down to the very bottom of the page, but sometimes the comment section on this blog post is really helpful, because you can see what issues or what bugs other users are identifying. And I know for me at least, it helps reassure me if I'm having an issue, I'm not the only one, or if there are fixes there, or even you get some insights for what is on the roadmap and what's coming up in future months as well. So I definitely recommend checking out the comments section down below as well. But with that, why don't we jump into some of my favorite features for this month? And although there are a lot of really cool features, I'm going to focus on just 2 of them today. So the first one is the Apply All Slicers button, Clear All Slicers button, and Optimization Presets update. So I previously covered the optimization tab in the ribbon when we've gone through some stuff like pausing visuals, some optimization presets. We've gone over the performance analyzer, but now there's a new option on that menu that's available in a few different places as well, which is Apply All Slicers button. So if I jump into my Power BI report, I have my demo report up here, which I generally use to demo what's new in Power BI at the user groups. And so if I go to the Optimize tab on the ribbon up here, we now have this option for Apply All Slicers button. And this button is also available from the Insert tab on the ribbon. If we go to Buttons, we see the list of standard buttons that have been in Power BI for a while now. But what's been added down here at the bottom is Apply All Slicers and Clear All Slicers as well. So a few different ways to add these buttons to our report. I'll just go back to the Optimize menu. But what this allows us to do is, if I have these 2 slicers up here in the header of my report, from the drop-down, if I just want to analyze a certain account product, so like a deposit account product, or a certain segment name, like segment 3, as soon as I select these values from the drop-down list in my slicer, all of the visuals in the report page update instantly. And I'm working with a fairly small data set, so having multiple slicers like this and selecting multiple values, I'm not really getting any performance issues. But if you're working with a much larger data set with a lot more rows on a fact table, for example, or if you have a high cardinality in some of your dimension attributes, you can start running into some performance issues where you're selecting values from a slicer and your report is just very slow to refresh. And then if you have to do another one, it's very slow to load. And so one thing that can help with this is using an apply all slicers button. So if I add this button to my report, I'm just going to drag it over here in my header. As soon as I've added this button to my report without doing anything else, as soon as I hit a drop down, I want to pick a certain item from my slicer, like investments. Just with the virtue of the button being on the report, we now see that when I make a selection, we get this little clock icon in my slicer, in the header of my slicer. And if I pick a certain segment, I get the same thing here as well. So now by default, because I have this button, these items from our slicers are not applied instantly to our report. I have to wait to click my button. And so if I control click on my button now, as soon as I click that, now these slicers are applied to my report. And this can really help optimize performance. Again, if we're working with a large data set where we have lots of different options from our slicer, being able to pause, apply, or select from our slicers particular values for a few different slicers, applying them all at once can help optimize the performance of our report page. But I'm just going to clear these selections for now. And now that I've cleared those, I need to apply it again. So apply all slicers, and there we go. And now we're back to the first view of the report. So that was my first favorite feature for this month. My second one is the public preview of on object in Power BI. And so as I said in the intro, I've been attending or helping out with this user group pretty much since its inception for 7 or 8 years. I've been using Power BI for at least that long. And this is probably the biggest fundamental change to the tool, or at least to the interface of the tool, within the last 7 or 8 years, as far as I can remember. It actually has its own dedicated blog post on the Microsoft BI blog. So back in the feature summary, if I just scroll down this blog post, there's a section in the March update for on-object interaction. This feature is in preview, but because it's just such a huge change and it requires its own blog post, really. So that's what I'll be referencing for the remainder of the What's New in Power BI. And it's really just a new way of how we want to create, build, format, update, and edit our visuals in Power BI. And I think rather than refer to the blog post here, why don't we just jump back into Power BI and we can see what it looks like in action. So I have a new, just a new blank tab in my report. And if I go over to the right, we see that we have format options, we have filter pane, but there's no visualizations pane anymore. So like, what the heck is going on? And that's because I've enabled the new on-object preview feature. So if your Power BI report isn't looking like this, you have to make sure you download the most recent version of Power BI. And you have to go to File, Option Settings, Options, and then from the list of global options, Preview feature, and you have to make sure that we have selected on-object interaction is checked. Otherwise, your Power BI report will look a little bit different from mine. Now we can create visuals a few different ways. We don't have a visualizations pane like we're used to, and I'm so used to saying we navigate to our visualizations pane and we do X, Y, and Z, and really that's where we define and build and do a lot of stuff with our visuals. Now on the Home tab on the ribbon, in this Insert section, we have New Visual, and we actually have a list of all the icons that previously we saw in the visualizations pane is on the ribbon. So this is looking a lot more similar to how we would add charts in Excel. It looks really similar with this option on the ribbon, and we can see the drop down of all the different types of visuals that we have. So I'm just going to add a new visual, and I'll make it a little bit bigger just so we can see what's going on. And we can see we just created a blank visual. Now we have 2 new icons to the top right-hand corner, just on the right, sort of below the header icons. We have 2 icons. We have a data or build your visual icon, and then we have a formatting icon. So if I click on this first one, the build a visual, we have a few different things here. We can define our visual type, or we can let Power BI suggest a type of visual that we should create based on the data that we add. So if I just select Add Data from the data well here, we see a preview of all of the data available to us in our Power BI report. This could be a data model, or it could be its own calculated tables or fact and dimension tables. All the data we have available to us previously in our data pane is now available right within the visual itself. So from our product dimension, if I add product category, as soon as I do that, because I've toggled on suggested data type, I've just added some categorical data. We've created a table so far, but I can continue to add additional data. So why don't we go to our fact table and add total balance. Now I have a category and I have a numeric field. I have a total balance measure. Now we have a bar chart has been created for us. And if I'm not happy with the automatic selection, I can either toggle this off, this sort of automatic suggestion, or from this visual types drop down just above, I can select a column chart or whatever type of visual that I want. And besides just building a visual, one thing that's cool now is that we have formatting options right on the visual as well. And one thing I think is cool about this is, again, this is a really familiar experience to what we're seeing in Excel. Building charts in Excel, we have some formatting options right on the visual. So we can do stuff like add a zoom slider to our numeric y-axis. I can add data labels to the columns in our column chart. But if I want to do something other than what's on this list, which just consists of the most common things that we want to format about our column chart, I can go to more options, and this pulls up this format pane on the right-hand side. And so this is what we've seen before with Power BI. We have all of our detailed options of how we want to more finely control the appearance of our visual here, with some of the same options like zoom slider, the colors of our columns, etc. But we can do a lot of these really basic formatting options, or even adding different columns from our data onto our visual from within the visual. So that's how we can build and format visuals from this new on-object experience. But one thing that's new as well is we can just start double-clicking on elements of our visuals. So if I want to update the title of the visual, previously I would go to Visual. We see this on the Format pane. We see not size and style. We see Title. And I would update the title from within this little text box here. So it's kind of hidden away, and you need to know where to look to be able to update it. But now I should be able just to double click directly on the visual like this. We have a text box, and so I can call this something like balance by category for current year, or whatever I'd want to update the title of the visual to. I can just do it directly from the visual as well. So this is really the core of this change to on-object creation and formatting, is we can do more things directly on the visual itself. We don't have to navigate back and forth from the visual to the visualizations pane or from the visual to the format pane. We can do a lot of stuff just within the visual right here. The last thing that I wanted to highlight just before I wrap up is, with this change, we also have what's known as a pane switcher view, which is similar to an experience, once again, we see in Excel, but we see in other Microsoft products like PowerPoint as well. So if I go to the View tab on the ribbon, right now we see that we have our Format tab and our Filters tab or panes are showing on our right-hand side. But if I can hide these completely, so there's just nothing showing on the right-hand side of my page. But if I wanted to look at our bookmarks and then format and then our data and selection, now instead of having them be added one by one and the size of my report canvas shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and gets smaller and smaller until I can barely see it anymore, now we have this pane switcher. So now we just have one pane at a time showing, and I can toggle between bookmarks, our selection pane, our format pane, and our data pane. And if I did want to see two at the same time, I don't have to toggle back and forth between them. I could right click on the format pane and say open in a new pane. And so now I can still see two side by side. But what's nice now is that I don't have to have everything open all at once. I can decide exactly what I want to see as I'm authoring or updating a report. So with that, I think I could speak on object for all evening. But with that, I'm going to wrap up what's new in Power BI for this month. If you have any questions or comments, as I say, please be sure to check out the blog post from the feature summary blog post from Microsoft. But with that, I'm happy to hand it back to Ken and hand it back to Jason for our feature presentation for this evening. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Joseph. That is cool stuff and definitely game changing. I see a whole bunch of recording in our future to re-record everything we've got. That's the scary thing, but yeah, very cool. I'm really interested to see. I mean, how much they've sort of modeled that on the Excel experience, and I think that's going to help a lot of people coming into Power BI for the first time. I think it's going to punish those of us for a little while that have been working with it, trying to find things. But certainly, I mean, you know, as any of us that have been experienced with it have gone through. I mean, getting lost in those field areas to try and figure out where the formatting option is anything they can do to reduce that is going to be huge. So very cool stuff. Anyway, thanks again, man, for doing this. I appreciate very much the insights and the diving into everything that's new on this and sharing it with the crew here. It's absolutely fantastic. So thank you once again so much. And now it is my great pleasure to welcome Jason Cockington to our show here. I'm going to do a very, very brief intro for Jason, and I'm going to let him take over on his own here. I know Jason because he works with Matt Allington, who is my partner at Skillwave, and I know that Jason does a lot of work with Power BI, and you thought, you know what, we should really have him on our show to actually show the cool stuff that he does. So that's basically the intro I'm going to give you, Jason. I'm going to hand it over to you now and let you take over and tell us more about you and show us what you got for us tonight.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Ken. All right. Okay, cool. Can you see my screen okay?
I can indeed, absolutely.
Excellent. All right. Well, first off, thanks, Ken, for inviting me. I love the opportunity to get in front of and share my experiences with Power BI with people. That's why I'm a trainer with Matt's team. I just love getting into the thick of it and hearing how Power BI is solving other people's problems. So I really appreciate the opportunity to present to your user group this evening. Now, for those of you who don't know me, or I guess that will be most of you, I do have a bit of an intro slide. So I guess the first thing I'd like to say is I come to Power BI from what I would consider a less traditional background. My background is in research science. I am a trained marine biologist, and I've spent the last 15 years or so, or prior to my Power BI years, working in and around research aquariums predominantly. And in my roles running these aquariums, I was actually doing business intelligence. I just never would have called it that because research and business aren't two words that generally tend to go together. It's kind of a dirty word in the research world. And so I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I was definitely not the target market for Power BI. A research scientist wasn't who Microsoft was pitching at. But the point is, I fell in love with Power BI as soon as I learned about it. So I was running all sorts of reports, managing these aquariums. I had livestock reports, I had inventory reports, I had budget reports, human resources reports. So all the same kind of reports we do every day in business, I was just doing them in a research context. And the way I was producing my reports was using Excel. And while Excel is a very competent tool and was able to give me everything I needed, I didn't know how to get it to give me everything I wanted. And that was really the key for me. And it was quite by chance. I was sitting back on the couch one night, flicking through my LinkedIn post, and a little pop-up came up along the lines of, do you work with data? If so, check out this webinar. Long story short, the next thing I knew, I found myself in one of Matt Allington's training courses, fell in love with Power BI overnight. I could see that it was my godsend, and basically I've been passionate about what this product can do ever since. So much so that I actually went through the effort of becoming a Microsoft certified trainer for Power BI, and have now left my research career behind me, and play in and around Power BI all day, every day. So I joined Matt's team in January of 2020. So that's really when Power BI became my full-time thing. And I do two roles within Matt's team. I predominantly do live training, but in and around my live training courses, I also offer self-service business intelligence consulting. So that's a bit about me and my background. And my last point there, for those of you who haven't recognized from the accent yet, I'm based down in Australia. I'm in Brisbane, Australia. So sunny Queensland. It's about 35 degrees Celsius outside, so it's pretty warm. So you might see me sweating as the sun gets up a bit higher as we move into the talk. All right, so enough about me. What are we here to talk about? Well, I really wanted to share my solution for this ability of selectively showing and hiding a visual based on a user selection, because this blog article that you can see in the bottom right hand corner here, this is our most popular blog article on our website. This gets significantly more traffic than any of the other blogs that we have on the website. And most of the blogs are Matt's blogs, but this one is a collaborative effort between Matt and me, and it's definitely our most popular article. So I wanted to share with you the walkthrough of how this all works, and hopefully open your eyes up into some possibilities if you aren't already aware of this technique. So basically, the aim is I want to only reveal the matrix once a selection has been made in the slicer. That's my first objective. And my second objective is to make sure that the matrix is still interactive once I have made it visible, so that it can still be used to cross-filter the rest of the report. The key to this whole process is essentially expression-based formatting, and we're going to use expression-based formatting in multiple different places in order to get this to work. Before we dive in and actually go through the demo, I just want to give you sort of the key points that we're going to look at here. So the first point is I'm going to create a card that I'm going to use to mask part of the visual. Now, this isn't necessary in all visuals, and you'll see that as we dive deeper in, but certainly on a visual like a matrix, we are going to need some kind of masking card. We're also going to need to have a measure that is able to detect whether or not a selection has been made on the column of interest. In this case, category on the slicer, we want to be able to detect when that selection has been made. Based on whether or not a selection has been made, we want a message to appear in the card so that the card does more than just be a blank object on our report. We actually want to convey a little message there to help our readers self-guide. We also then need a measure that's going to allow us to selectively render when there is data to put into the visual. So we don't want the visual to be populated from the get-go. We only want it to populate once a selection is made. And the last measure that we're going to need is a measure that controls the background color on the card so that the card will become transparent once the visual has been made visible. And my last note here is that the technique I'm going to share with you works with a lot of visuals, but it doesn't work with every visual. So some of the visuals, you're going to get a less than optimal outcome. So things like waterfall charts, you're going to have to do some tweaking around. Visuals like the map, there's no way to de-render the background map. So you have to take some compromises over exactly how you can use this technique. All right, so let's jump into Power BI and take a look at this whole process. So I've got this page here. I'm going to be using this page a little bit later on, but for the moment, it's just the welcome page to remind us what we're trying to achieve. So there's lots of ways we can selectively show and hide content in Power BI. But if, for example, we're using bookmarks, there's no way we can get a bookmark to activate based on a slicer selection. So if we want specifically that outcome, we need another technique, and that's really what I'm trying to solve here. So just to give you a quick orientation over the data, so I can show you that we're not doing any tricks here. We've just got the standard AdventureWorks training data set that Matt and I use for our regular training courses. So it's pretty simple and straightforward. Simple star schema. I do have a disconnected table over here, but we're not going to use that straight away. That table is going to come into play a little bit later on as we dive deeper in. And then I've got this empty measures table here at the moment that I'm going to put all my measures into, just so that we've got them all front and center in one location. All right, so let's start off with this Let's Build It page. So I've already got a slicer on my page, and I've got the matrix that I want to selectively show and hide. So I'm going to work with these two initially. Once we've solved the problem for the matrix, I'll then show you how the technique is slightly different when we're working on a bar chart, and then we'll just roll on from there and look at a couple of other visuals as well. So the first thing I want to call out here is that the slicer has an entry in it that doesn't have any data against it. Components. We currently have no component sales within the data set. So I don't want to show components in the slicer because that's just going to render everything blank and doesn't really make a lot of sense. And some of you are probably already aware of this trick, but I'm just going to put my key metric, in this case total sales, onto my slicer and selectively hide that components. So I'll just go over into sales. You can see I'm working on the old interface. I wasn't brave enough to switch over to the brand new interface for this call, but sure enough, I'll be doing this technique on the new interface as well in the future. So I'm just going to put total sales onto filters on this visual for my category slicer, and then I'm going to say is not blank and apply the filter, and we can see components disappears. Now that's probably not new to any of you. You've probably all seen that tip and trick before, but the point is we're going to use a very similar behavior to control the matrix. So we now have the three valid categories, and the first piece of the puzzle is to determine whether or not a filter has been applied to that particular column of data. Has there been a selection made on the slicer? So I'm going to go into my show hide table, and I've got a holding measure here that I'm just going to type straight over the top, and I am going to call this measure check filtered. I'll just zoom this in a bit so you guys can see it nice and clear. Check filtered. And I'm going to use the isFiltered function for this. That is a bit of an IntelliText bug there. So if you've encountered this bug or haven't encountered this bug, but are going to, if you ever start typing in a function and it doesn't pop up, it is a bug. So just commit your formula at whatever point it is, and then open up the measure again, and then usually that's enough to get the IntelliSense to come back. Now, I write DAX formulas all day, every day, but I am incredibly dependent on IntelliSense. My spelling is atrocious, and so I just start putting in key letters and then pressing tab once I see the result I'm after. So in this case, we're looking for, is there a filter on the category column? So I'm just going to go is filtered products category, close brackets and enter, and this measure is going to return true if there is a filter on that column, and it's going to return false if there isn't. So just to test it, I'm going to put it into this multi-row card here. I'll just drop that down a little bit so that we can still have the formula bar open at the same time. And we can see that the check filtered measure is currently returning false over here in the left-hand corner where my pointer is. And as soon as I click on bikes on category, it changes over to true. So this is just a simple Boolean result, true when the selection has been made and false when it hasn't. So that's the first piece of the puzzle. The next piece of the puzzle is I want to create my message that I'm going to put onto my card that I'm going to use to cover the parts of the visual that I can't selectively control. So I'm going to create a new measure, and I'll call this measure message. And this one's just going to be a simple if. So if check filtered, so I don't need to say is true. If I just leave it as if check filtered, that's the equivalent of saying if check filtered returns true. So if result is true, then I don't want to return anything. So I'll just put an empty text string in there, and when it is returning false, when it isn't returning true, then I want to leave my readers a message. So just something like you must first select a category from the slicer. So just a simple message. It doesn't really matter what it is, but the point is we've got two different states on this message. To test it out, I'll stick it into that multi-row card, and we can see it's currently returning false, and so we're getting our message. As soon as I select one of my categories, the message goes blank and check filtered returns true. So that's all working as expected. The next measure is the secret source. So this one I'm going to call hide visual. And again, we're going to use an if. And again, if's going to be dependent on check filtered. But if check filtered is returning true, then I want this measure to return 1. And if it's returning false, I want it to return 0. Again, I'll stick that one into the multi-row card, and we can see 0, select a category, and it changes over to 1. Again, all working as expected. There's actually one more measure that we're going to need, and that measure is going to control the background color of the card. So I'll go ahead and create another measure, and I'll call this card background color. And again, this is going to be dependent on an if check filtered. Now, if check filtered is returning true, then I want to return a transparent color. Now, for those of you who have not seen this technique before, basically to render a different transparency on the color, you need to enter the color as a hex code and then add the percentage at the end. So I'll start off with the hex code for white, which is 6Fs. And then if I put in a 50 here, it'll return 50% transparent. Or in this case, I actually want 100% transparency. So that's just 00 at the end of the hex code. So if there is a filter on the slicer, I want to return transparent. Otherwise, I want to return white. White being the background color of my page. So whatever color you want to put in there will work. And again, I'll stick that onto my multi-row card just to see that it's working. So it's currently returning white, and if I select bikes, it's going to change over to the transparent color. Now, it's returning the text because I put it in the values area of visual at the moment, but once we put it onto a formatting field, and then it will actually return the color. Okay, so the next piece is creating my message card. So I've got a card here on the page that's currently blank. So I'm just going to put my message into the card. And we can see the message is returning a message at the moment. You must first select a category from the slicer to see the results. As soon as I select a category, the message disappears. But you can see the word message is still there. The category label is still active. So I actually want to go in and turn that category label off. So I'll go into my formatting paintbrush and just turn off category label. I'll then stick my card over the top of my matrix. And if you wanted to, you could just leave it here. There would be no problem with that. We're getting a basic effect. The card is currently hiding the slicer. And when I click bikes, oh dear, my card is not becoming transparent. So I need to put on that card background color. So I'll go into the formatting paintbrush, into the general settings, into effects, and we've got an FX button here next to background color. Now, anywhere where you see that FX button, it means you can use conditional formatting on that particular property. And anywhere where you can use conditional formatting, you can use expression-based formatting. So I can go click on this FX button, and instead of formatting this color based on some rules, I'm going to change it to base on the result of a field value. And the field value in this case will be my card background color. Click OK, and the color is now transparent. So, that didn't apply. Let's try that again. There we go. Now it's working. So I don't have a slicer selection. I have my card covering my visual. I make a selection in the slicer and the matrix becomes visible. But the problem is at the moment, we can't interact with this matrix because the card is sitting directly over the top of everything in the matrix. So basically, I only want the card to cover what I can't control with my magic hide visual measure. So essentially, the things that I can't control is the presence of the total row and the presence of the column headers. At least not at this point in time. This may change in the future, but at the moment, those two things I can't control conditionally. So I'm just going to resize my card so that it's just covering the top two rows of the matrix. So now my matrix is interactable and I can slice and dice, and I can still get to my clerical even though my card's there, because as soon as I've interacted with the matrix, the card gets sent to the back. If I click away from the matrix, the card is still there, so I can't go straight to clerical. That's really the only limitation that we're going to have here when this is all working. Okay, I'll just move my card so that it better aligns with my matrix. I'll switch over to my matrix, and I'm now going to open up my filters pane, and I'm going to put this hide visual onto my matrix. It looks like I've got that there already. Don't know, I must have pre-saved this. And the trick here is that we want to force this hide visual to an is status, and we only want it to work when the number is returning 1. So when hide visual returns 1, I'll click apply on that. I'll now clear my slicer, and we can see that the matrix has actually depopulated. It's got the row, the column headers rather, and the total row, but the rest of the matrix has depopulated. As soon as I make a selection in the category slicer, the matrix populates with the relevant data. So that's the secret sauce right there, the hide visual. So I'll just fine tune this, get my card into the exact position I want it, and now we can see the desired outcome. Okay, so the takeaway from that particular part of the talk is that there are 4 key visuals, 4 key measures in play. The check filtered measure is detecting whether or not a selection has been made in the slicer. The message measure is returning some kind of user message based on that check filtered status. Hide visual is returning a 1 or a 0 based on that check filtered status, and the card color is returning transparent or white based on that check filtered status. So what about when we're working with a bar chart? On the bar chart, it's a little bit less complicated because we don't need to worry about the measure card. On the bar chart, I can just go straight in and put the hide visual onto filters on this visual, set it to is 1, click apply filter, and the bar chart depopulates. As soon as I make a selection, the bar chart populates, and I can still get cross-filtering interaction with my other visuals. So one thing you'll notice is that the bar chart is currently displaying calendar year on the y-axis, and it's currently displaying the title. Now, if you wanted to hide the calendar year, you could just have another card, for example. I could put another card on the page, and I'll do an equivalent to the message card, but slightly different. So I just want a measure, give me nothing, and that's just going to render blank, or not the word blank. It'll just render it nothing onto the card. So I just get a blank card. I'll go and turn off category label. And now I just need to conditionally format my background color on this card with background color. And now this blank card, I could just stick over the top of that y-axis title, and I'll get the desired effect. So that's one approach. I could also write a measure to conditionally show or hide that particular label as well, which we're going to see again in a minute. For the title I can go in and conditionally control the title that's being returned. So I'll go ahead and create a new measure for this one, and I'll call this one chart title. And we'll do something like if check filtered, then we want to return total sales by year. Otherwise, we want to return the message. Select a category from the slicer to see chart, for example. Again, two different states depending on the status of that check filtered. I'll go into my bar chart, into the formatting paintbrush, under general, under title. We can see we've got title text that can be controlled conditionally. So I'll set that up based on the field value, and I now have this chart title. And so we're currently getting select a category from the slicer to see the chart. We select something on the slicer and the chart renders. Okay, so you can see that we can get the same basic behavior with subtle deviations in the technique. So I'm going to look at a couple of other ones that are a little bit tricky, particularly if you're following my my matrix solution verbatim, and that is dealing with gauges, cards, and KPIs.
Jason, before you
Yes.
before you dive into that, there's a comment in the chat from Anthony, just on a general comment. I mean, but for many charts, to be creating so many measures with chart titles for dealing with that. I mean, do you have a strategy to try and keep those to a dull roar, or is it just a proliferation of a massive amount of measures?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Unfortunately, I don't have a one size fits all solution, so it does depend on what I'm trying to deal with and how much showing and hiding I want to do. I don't generally try and hide everything on the page. It's usually a few key visuals that I'm dealing with, and so in that case, it is more that I've done it on a case-by-case basis. We can see here that these three visuals are all reporting total sales. So the set of measures I'm going to develop for my gauge here is essentially going to be the same thing I use on the other two as well, with a slight adjustment for the KPI, because the KPI is a little bit trickier. But yeah, good question. It's possible that we could do it doing something like using calculation groups. I've just never gone to that effort to dig into that level, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't use this technique using calculation groups if you want to do it across a range of measures. Okay, so gauges and cards and KPIs are a little bit tricky because we can't use the hide visual secret source. And if I go and put the hide visual onto my gauge here, I don't get the choice of selecting anything else. It's just set at is less than. So I can't fix this to the is one. And so that's why these ones become a little bit trickier. So for this solution, I'm actually going to have to control when to return total sales. So I'm going to use the same technique as the hide visual, except instead of returning a 1 or a 0, it's going to return total sales or not. So I'll create a new measure, and I'll call this one checked sales. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you call it, you get the idea. So this one is going to be if check filtered. So if check filtered is returning true, then I want to return total sales. I'm then going to replace the total sales I have on the visual with this checked sales. And I'll just rename this total sales inside the visual, and we get the desired outcome. Now, when I'm rendering something like a gauge empty, like I am currently, I don't like having the labels render. I just really want to see the title here, and unfortunately, the only way I could hide the horseshoe here would be to actually put a blank card over the top of it, which you could do. That, I mean, we can't interact with the gauge to cross filter the report anyway, so putting a masking card over the top of this would work fine. It just depends what kind of effect you're going for. So for this one, I would actually go down the path of controlling the callout value, which is currently blank, and the target labels as well. So I'm going to create 2 more measures. As you can see, we can very quickly start getting lots and lots of measures. I'll call this one check callout. And again, same basic idea. If check filtered, then I want to return black. Otherwise, I want to return transparent. Now, I mentioned that transparent can be transparent of any color. So previously, I did transparent white. If I want to do transparent black, that would be #0000000. That's the black hex color code. And so then 50 would be 50% transparent, or another 2 zeros will make black completely transparent. It doesn't need to be the same color. I'm just showing you that it works on any hex color code. So this is my check callout. So I'll go into my gauge here, into the callout value, into the color, and set this based on check callout. And the callout value has disappeared. I want to do the same thing for the labels. Now, if you don't care about the color being the same, then you could use the same measure here. I'm just doing a different measure because I want a different color here. So check labels is again going to be if check filtered, Then I want to return that dark gray color there. So that is hash 605E5C. Otherwise, I want to return transparent. So I prefer to do transparent white because I can just see the two zeros nice and clearly. And we'll put this one against the data labels. And field value, check labels. Okay, so the gauge is now rendering blank. I make a selection in my category slicer and my gauge populates. As I said, I could have just put a blank message card over the top of that and I would have successfully hidden it. So it just depends what kind of depth you're wanting to go to here. For the card, we basically just jump straight into the callout value and the labels because that's the only thing being displayed on the card. So I've already got the measures I need. So callout value, conditionally control the callout value color, and that will be my check callout. And then I want to conditionally control my check label. And again, we can see that the cards disappeared. I make a selection on category and both my gauge and my card populate. The KPI is very similar, except the KPI has one more added challenge to it, and that is the fact that the color being used in the KPI can be one of three colors. And the problem is once we render the data inside the KPI blank, it's going to say the word blank in red. And so we're going to have one more measure in order to get this one to work. So if I go ahead and put my replace my total sales with my checked sales, we can see that we're getting this word blank here. And it's gone red. So that at least the fact that it's gone red lets me know exactly which one it is that I need to control. So I'm going to go ahead, create another measure. And I will call this one checked target. And we'll go if, in this case, we want if checked sales. And if checked sales is returning true, I want to return the red color. So that is hash D64554. And if it's returning false, I want my transparent color. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, 0, close brackets, enter. And we'll go into our formatting paintbrush. We go into the trend axis. And in the trend axis, we can see there are three colors here that we can conditionally control. The only one I need for this particular technique to show and hide the KPI is the bad color. So I'll set that up based on my checked target. And blank disappears. And to make the goal disappear, that is my target label. So again, I'll just go into the target label, click on the font color conditional formatting, field value, and we've already got a measure in place. So this will be checked labels. Okay, and now the KPI has also depopulated. Checked sales here doesn't make a lot of sense, so I'll just come back into my build visual and update checked sales to total sales. And now my KPI has an appropriate title. I make a selection in my product category and all three visuals populate. Okay, so that's the crux of the show hide technique, but I can use it for other things as well. So far we've conditionally controlled the reveal of a matrix. We've done gauge, card, and KPI. Slightly different technique, but essentially the same logic behind it. Now I'm going to have a look at conditionally controlling a button, a navigation button on the page that will populate when certain users are logged in and when other users are logged in or selected from the slicer, it won't work. So I'll go ahead and create a new page. I'll call this one button. And for this to work, I am going to have to use this disconnected table here, this users table. So just to have a quick look at the users data, the users data, I've basically just got 3 users in here. These aren't real email addresses, but you get the idea. We've got some email addresses here against the users, and we've got this show hide column. And we've also got this image URL here, and the image URL column is set up as a data category image URL. Okay, so I'll start off by putting a table on my page, and on the table, I am going to go to my users and choose my user and their image. And we can see these 3 lovely gentlemen here. Now, basically, I want to give Jason and Ken the ability to use this button, but I don't want Matt to be able to use this button. So we're going to go through the same basic process, but this time with the idea that we're controlling a button rather than controlling a data visual. So now I'm just going to put all of these measures in the same table. Depending on what technique you're actually using, you wouldn't need to use all of these measures. You just need to use some of these measures. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new measure, and I'll call this measure selected user. Missed the space there, selected user. And we're going to say if is filtered users user, then I want to return the selected value of the user's user. And close brackets again. And again, I might put a multi-row card in place here so we can see this all coming together. So we've got our selected user. We don't currently have a selected user. If I select Ken, we get Ken. Okay. We'll then create a check measure. And we're going to say if selected user, and then I want to basically give Jason and Ken this authority. So because I've got more than one valid value here, I need to use some kind of OR syntax. My personal preference when I'm dealing with OR conditions is I like to use the in operator. So I prefer to work with lists rather than selected user is Ken, selected user is Jason. So if selected user in Jason or Ken, then I want to return a 1, otherwise I want to return a 0. So that check measure, actually I might call that, I'll call that hide button instead, because that's just like the hide visual. So that's our hide button measure. I'll add that into the multi-row card, and if I don't have anyone selected, we get a 0. If I select Jason, we get a 1. Now I just need to control the navigation of the button and the color of the button. So 2 more measures. Button color So this one will be if, and we want to use our hide button here. So if hide button, then I want to return, if hide button equals 1, because this one doesn't return true or false, this one returns a number. So if hide button equals 1, then I want to return black. Otherwise, I want to return transparent. Add my button color on there, and we'll do one more. And we'll call this one navigation. And this one will be if hide button equals 1. Whoops, wrong button, equals 1. Now I just define where I want this button to go. So in this case, I'm just going to make it jump to the show hide page. And if it's not returning 1, then I don't want the button to do anything. And we'll add that one in there. So JSON is selected. The button will be visible. The button color will be black, and it will jump to the show hide page. If I deselect JSON, the button becomes invisible, the button color becomes transparent, and the navigation doesn't do anything. So I'll just go in and insert a button now. Let's go with the left arrow. We'll stick this somewhere down here. I'm not going to make this button too fancy, but just basic principles here. So I'm going to give this button text, go to page, something like that. Let's make this decent font size, bring it up to 20. And now the font color and the arrow, I want to control with my button color. So I'll click on the FX there, field value, and we'll do button color. Okay, go to page, it's disappeared. And now I need to make the icon also disappear. So again, clicking on the line color conditional formatting FX button, we'll set that up as field value again. And we're going for our button color. And the arrow has also disappeared. Let's make the button nice and big. Bring it out the width of the table. Okay, so now if a user gets selected, the button becomes visible, but the button doesn't currently do anything. So we need to give the button some kind of navigation property. So I'll go into the action of the button. I'll tell it that I want this to be a page navigation button, and the destination can be controlled using conditional formatting. So this will be my navigation measure. And now we can see if I go ahead and select Ken, I can hold control down, click on my button, and I jump to my welcome page. So again, super useful technique if you, in that situation before, Ken, in response to that question, if you had a whole lot of visuals you wanted to hide, if it was a situation where you wanted to hide an entire page, this is the sort of thing I would do. I would hide the entire page, and then only certain individuals would have a button that they could click that would take them to that page, or under certain slicer selection or whatever it is, whatever triggers that condition, that true false condition, would jump me to the hidden page where I could then see that content. And we can see if I choose Ken or Jason, the button renders, but if I choose Matt, the button goes blank, and doesn't matter how many times I click it, it doesn't do anything. It just doesn't go anywhere. So it's a really nice technique. And I've got a little bit of time left, so I want to try and squeeze one more thing in here if I can, and hopefully you can see where I'm going with this. And that is that all of these different states that I've dealt with have been based on a selection that returns true or false. Now, there's one other kind of thing that we do in Power BI that is a true or false argument that controls content of our report, and that is our row level security. And we can use row level security against the visuals as well. And so normally we're using row level security to control data, but we can actually use this same technique, the row level security technique, to determine whether or not a particular visual should be visible to that particular user. And so that's the last one I want to look at today. And I'll just call this page RLS. Technically, it's not row level security, but it's working against the same kind of idea. So if I go back and have a look at this data preview of the users table, you'll notice that we've got an email address, which we're going to use to determine who the user is that's logged in. And we're going to use this show hide column that's returning true or false. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is determine our role. So I'll go into modeling, manage roles, and I'll create a new role. I'll call this C chart. This role will be on the users table, and it's going to be dependent on the email, and the email is going to be user principal name. Hopefully I spelled that correctly. Yep, good, excellent. All right, so we've got our role. So we've now got a role called C chart that puts a filter on the users table, email equals user principal name. Now, this is subtly different to row level security because obviously my disconnected table isn't connected to my data at all. So it's not going to control what sales are being released. If I connected this table up as a row level security table, then it would certainly do that. But this one's just here to conditionally show or hide based on the person's login. So we're going to need 4 new measures. 4 different measures rather than new measures, I should say. So I'm going to start off with a multi-row card, just so I can see them as they come together. So my first measure, I want to determine who has actually logged in. So this one I will just call current user. And this will just be user principal name. Nice and simple. And I'll add that into my multi-row card. And you can see at the moment it's jason@acceleratorbi.com.au. That's my email address. So at the moment, this is not going to control any particular visual, but once I change it over to the XBI accounts, then we can see it come into play. So we've got our current user. We also need a show or hide trigger. Show hide. And this one's a little bit more complex. I want to say if has one value, and then we're looking at the email column, then which there will only be one value because only one person can be logged into the report at a time. So when we're logged in, what do we want to do with that login detail? Well, I want to use my lookup value. And the first thing we need in a lookup value is the column that contains the result. So the column in this case is the user's email. We then want to search something. So we want to search the show hide column. And the result we're looking for is when the show hide column is true. Close brackets again. And I'll put my show hide onto my multi-row card, and we can see that that is currently returning blank. But if I go into view as a role, I'll go other user, I'll go ken@xbi.com.au with the C chart role, and we can now see that when Ken's logged in, we return Ken's email address. Okay, so now I just need to choose the metric that I want to render and choose the label color that I want to work with. So 2 more measures. I'll call this one hide sales. And this will be if show hide equals current user, then I want to return total sales. Again, you can see the total sales values. If I view it as Jason, Jason does not have permission to see this. So the hide sales render blank for Jason. And then the last measure is just the data labels, or the labels on the visual. So I'll call this one hide labels. And again, we're going to go if show hide equals current user, then I want to return black. Otherwise, I want to return transparent. And pop that on there. So Jason will get a transparent color. View as Ken again, and Ken will get a black color. So now I can build the visual. So let's go with a bar chart. And on our bar chart, we will put, I'll go with calendar year on my y-axis. I'll go with my hide sales on my x-axis. And I now just want to control the colors of the labels and titles. And so basically I want to do everything that I want to conditionally hide here. So if I just go view as Jason, someone who doesn't have permission, I'll see what I need to hide. So I need to hide the calendar year label and the title. So I'll go into y-axis. We don't want to control values. We want to control the title, color, based on field value, based on hide labels. That's disappeared, and I just want to also hide the general title, not changing the text, but the text color. Field value with hide labels. Bar chart has disappeared, so Jason logs in, he doesn't see anything. Ken logs in, or Matt logs in, and Matt sees the bar chart. All right, that's pretty much taken us to my full time. So I'll wrap it up there. I've just got a couple of final slides. So we've talked about the navigation situation. So slight change really was that we needed some kind of navigation control. And for the RLS solution, we needed to detect who was logging in and then pick up their details and determine whether or not they're authorized. And then if they are authorized, we will reveal the metric of interest. And if they're not authorized, they obviously won't get anything. And then to remove any confusion, we just want to hide all of the labels so that that visual doesn't even seem to be there for someone who isn't authorized to see it. That is pretty much it from me. Before I hand over to questions, I just wanted to shout out to anyone that is interested in doing some training to upskill in Power BI. If you don't find my voice annoying and grating, then I would love to have you along on one of our training courses. And so given that SkillWave is one of our major sponsors today, I've organized to get a 20% discount on the upcoming live training course that I'm going to be running through SkillWave, which is due to kick off on the 17th of April, I believe. So if you're interested in joining that, that is going to be 6 4-hour sessions. So it'll be a whole week plus a Monday, because we have a Anzac holiday on the Tuesday. So it is going to be a little bit of a strange time coordination this time, but we're going to do 5 days in a row and then 1 day on the following week. And if you would like to take advantage of that, there is a coupon code here. You can just scan this QR code and it will take you to the SkillWave website, and then you can plug in that coupon code to get a 20% discount. If you are interested and don't find these dates convenient, feel free to reach out to me afterwards, and I can certainly look at carrying over that 20% discount into either a future course, or if you have a group of people in your organization that you'd like to get some bulk training on, we can look at doing a special course just for you. So that's it from me. I hope I shared some insights that that you can take away and find valuable. Other than that, I'll hand over to questions.
All right, we've got one question that just came in from Anthony. Is there an option to turn a page or tab on and off based on row level security? He says he has an interim answer. You can hide all the visuals on the page for one or another user. But do you know of an option to do that? Turn off an entire page?
No, not to my knowledge. I don't think you can control page visibility with RLS at the moment.
My thought on that one is that probably you would want to set up an individual page with bookmarks and have a navigation page where you can hide the visual depending on what's going on that would prevent somebody from even navigating to the page. I think is probably the way that I might approach that. So but I don't know of any way specifically to turn a page on or off dynamically any other way. So
yeah, I agree. So either way, you're going to have to interact with a button, and whether you show and hide that button or control it through bookmarks. Yeah, I agree.
Otherwise, there's a lot of techniques like this that has one box and says, "I'm sorry, but there's nothing to see here," right? So there you go. Awesome. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate that. It was a fantastic presentation, really cool techniques and whatnot. I imagine that folks are going to want to check out the recording on this to walk through the steps and whatnot. So again, as always, we're going to be getting this produced and uploaded onto the SkillWave YouTube channel, so you can watch it back through afterwards. I don't see any other questions coming in at this point in time. So if you do have one, you've got a few seconds to fire one in. But outside of that, listen, Jason, thanks. That was fantastic. I really appreciate having you on the show. Great content. Definitely got me thinking, and I got to go and now I want to try this with the new user interface and see how it all works too, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Fun stuff. There you go. Awesome. With no other questions coming in, folks, I think we'll sign off for tonight. So watch for that notification about the recording being up. And don't forget that the next meetups are open for sign up as well. So hopefully we will see you either to talk about Lambda functions or to join John on whatever he's going to show us on the charting side of things. And then we'll be back with some more Power BI content after the MVP Summit as well. So thanks very much for coming, folks. Thanks again, Jason, for the presentation, and Joseph for pulling together the What's New in Power BI as well for us on a monthly basis. We will catch you all next time.